Okay, hi. So today we're going to talk about all the books I read in October. I'm finally getting one of these out on time, so that's exciting. We're just going to dive right in. The first book I read was Yumi and the Nightmare Painter by Sanderson. I'll give you a little look at it. So this is the cover. All of the artwork was done by Aaliyah Chen. This is back, and I'll show you the end pages. Gives you kind of like a good look at what the art style in it is like. Yeah. So this is the third book in a year of Sanderson, and it is a standalone within the Cosmere, just like the first one, Trust of the Emerald Sea. This is about two main protagonists, Yumi and Painter, who live in like substantially different lands. Yumi lives in a place that is very hot, where kind of the earth itself heats everything. Painter lives in a place that is constantly dark. Their societies are quite a bit different developmentally. Yumi's society is not technologically advanced, while Painter's is. And then they live, have very different jobs. So Yumi is seen as I can't remember the name of what her role is, but there are only a few of them picked throughout the world in which she lives in. So she communes with the gods in order to acquire things from them that the society needs and cannot provide for themselves. She's almost treated like royalty, in the way where royalty can be held afar from other people, but also be very sheltered. And then there is Painter, who lives in a more of like an urban, fantastic setting. It's always dark, but at night, nightmares come in, like these beings they call nightmares. And his job as a painter is to trap them by painting them. So then we see their stories connect while they're living in different places. They themselves begin to bounce back and forth, kind of having to live each other's lives. And they're very much connected. So they don't know each other at all. This happens to them. And then they start having to like change their lifestyle to try to accommodate what the other person's life looks like. They have to figure out who each other are, why they're connected, and what forces are at play that are causing this to happen. The dynamic between the two characters is very fun. You get to experience a decent amount of growth with both of them. Both of them are on the younger side, like late teens into their early 20s. And you kind of see like secrets of their own life get revealed. As they see how each other lives, they kind of are able to emulate each other in some ways and learn from each other's personalities. And then you kind of see why they're connected and see everything come together. I really enjoyed the book. The connection was a little strange for me when it all pieced together. I buy it like 75%. You know, like I wasn't 100% convinced by the connection, but it was enough for it to be enjoyable. It is told through the perspective of Hoyd, like the first book in the year of Sanderson. And yeah, overall it was like an enjoyable fantasy standalone. Okay, and then I read Valor by Gwynne. This is the second book in the Faithful and the Fallen series. So this series is fairly complex in the way it is told. It takes place in a land where there are many kings, and they, at the beginning of the book, all live in peace. But there is a prophecy that tells of a coming war. They live on land that they have colonized and stolen from giants who kind of live in smaller groups now in isolated places. The coming war that is prophesized is a god war that is going to be kind of like a good versus evil. And you're following a decent number of characters from different kingdoms within this land as it's kind of like the winter is coming, the God War is coming. That's where the first book goes. I would say that the first 75% of the first book is world setting. And then at that like last 25% of the first book, that's where you really get into the action. That is more on par with what the rest of the series is going to look like. It goes from like 0 to 100. It starts out calm, there's peace. Yeah, it becomes very violent. I really like the series. I think that I really enjoyed where the second book went with it. For me, it's like the closest thing that I can think to Game of Thrones. And I know people, at least for a while, everything was being sold as like the new Game of Thrones. But there is, in the second book, a kind of Game of Thrones occurring. There's this kingdom is experiencing like more tumultuous times. The thing that you had prophesied to you in the first book is beginning. You're seeing the actions happen. So unlike a Game of Thrones, a Song of Ice and Fire, where you are waiting for the thing that we keep saying is going to happen, like we're right in it. It's happening. It's like we are seeing the signs. He's not afraid to kill people. He also does, I think, a good job of like introducing more characters in a way. I don't want to say it's less confusing, because there are a lot of characters. You have to keep track of a lot of people. You have to keep track of what kingdom they're from. But what he'll kind of do is he'll start laying the groundwork for how a character is going to tie into the story you're kind of already witnessing, with enough time for you to kind of make sense of it. So sometimes I think what I see is that especially in fantasy, a character will get introduced immediately before the thing that the author needed them for is happening. I think John Gwynne does a really good job of introducing them a few steps before, so you kind of get immersed, understand their story, not really sure why it connects, and then you get the bridge and it makes sense. So overall, if you like military fantasy, if you don't mind a very violent fantasy, and you enjoy interesting character types, you're following a lot of different types of characters. You're following young and old. You're following morally gray and like more moral people. Yeah, I think you would like this type of book. Okay, and then I read The Woman in Me, Britney Spears' book that just came out. To give background, I have always loved Britney. I am very much in the age range for that. Her first CD came out when I was like in kindergarten. And so kind of from kindergarten to high school is when a majority of her career was happening. Like that was my age when her career was like at its peak. There's so many people talking about this book. I keep getting like recommendations from YouTube of like everything you need to know about the Britney book. Just read the Britney book. I think that's the basis of my review. These reviews that people are doing online are like an hour long, and it's like a 5-hour audiobook at one time speed. Like just commit to it if you're interested. It is not the most well-written thing in the world, which I wasn't really anticipating it to be. It's a bit repetitive, not in terms of content, but she'll kind of say the same sentence twice in a row, trying to kind of like emphasize the point. It takes you from her childhood into her adulthood, the conservatorship, and kind of life after that a little bit. It seems like this book was written a little bit of time ago, like kind of more immediately after she got out of her conservatorship. She is telling her side of the story, the things that she was going through in all those moments that the media portrayed her as the bad guy, as the most horrible person in the world. She brings up things like an interview that Ryan Seacrest did with her that was not really appropriate for the point of the interview, or these jokes that Sarah Silverman made about her that were very unfriendly and unkind and not feminist at all. And it's interesting because it's kind of like these type of people are famous now and are famous for being liberal or woke in some capacity. They perpetrated all the things against Britney that people are now like, oh, free Britney, I can't believe we did that. But like, or I can't believe they did that. But they were the type of people that like rode on the coattails of her success by like tearing her down. She lets things go. She tells her perspective. She talks about being in the conservatorship. She doesn't get really deep into a lot of things. It's a 5-hour audiobook. It's very short. She'll very simply say something was bad that was atrocious. Kind of being a slave to her family. And she'd be like, it's so unfair. And it's more than unfair. But yeah, it's really interesting about how the conversation around Britney has changed over the past few years. So when I was a teenager, I was very excited for her newest album, Blackout, to come out because she had not written or come out with albums in a few years. There was a gap when she was with Kevin Federline and when she had her 2 kids. And so I think it either just came out or it was announced or something. And I walked into my English classroom and I was 14 and I was talking to someone and I said something to the effect of, I was so excited that like I couldn't wait to listen or to get the Britney album, something like that. And I remember my a male adult teacher saying something to the effect of, that's not something that you should be like proudly announcing. Like as if it was wrong of me to want to listen to her music and it was wrong of me to be a fan of her. And, you know, at the time, me being the person I was kind of like, yeah, okay, eat rocks. Like, I don't care what your opinion is. But as an adult, it's just kind of interesting how much like women in the spotlight are torn down, and how teenage girls are made to feel badly about seeing these women who are normal women living their lives as like role models in some capacity. I wouldn't even say that she was a role model to me. I just really liked her music. Anyway, yeah, if you have interest, then you should read it. I thought it was a good audiobook, even though she wasn't the one doing it. And then I read Fool's Assassin by Robin Hobb, so I am finally in the last trilogy in the realm of the Elderling that exists at this point in time. This is a 5th trilogy, so this is the first one is called Fool's Assassin. I can't really say too much about it, but it does pick up quite a number of years after the last 5th trilogy. It is very, very slow. I would say about the first 85% of the book is completely set up to the series. You are immersing yourself in Fitz's life. You see at least like 15 years of time go by. I actually preferred that slow-moving part to the end. I trust that Robin Hobb is going to take this in a direction that I will like more, but I was not a fan of some of the way things happened at the end. I can't really say much because this is like book 14 in a 16-book series. All I can say is that if you have any interest in extremely character-driven fantasy and you want to see someone progress through their entire life, I would highly recommend picking up Assassin's Apprentice. But I would say that if you read Assassin's Apprentice and you don't like it, you're not going to like the rest of the series, so just give up. I read Taaqtumi, an anthology of Arctic horror stories. This is all by Indigenous authors. I think that they're all from the Arctic. I found this to be just okay. I'm not a huge horror buff, So I don't read a ton of the genre. I think though, for me personally, horror shines in the short narrative format where you can kind of leave a story without all of the explanations, and it can just be creepy or terrifying. And I look for horror to kind of make me feel something. Like I want it to make me uncomfortable. And some of these definitely did. I think that the last 3 stories and maybe the first one were the most interesting to me. There's one that's like 100 pages that I didn't really like that much. Overall, it was just okay for me. I wouldn't really go out of my way to recommend it, but if you like short horror, and these all have like an Arctic setting, so like a wintry, colder setting, then like maybe you'd be interested in this, but I wouldn't push anyone specifically to pick this up. So those are all of the books that I finished in October. Let me know if you have read any of these and if you like them. And that is all I have. So until next time, happy reading.